So as a parent, you're a parent, what do you want for your kids when you die? Not just money. Of course, you want them to be well off and have money, but you also want them to have self-esteem and their own growth and their own, all the different things you want for them. And you want them to love each other when you're gone. So that's one of the biggest things is you're setting up a system where your kids will get along and they'll love each other and they'll have family holidays and you'll be looking down on them going, oh, look how happy they are. The family recipes and they're having Thanksgiving together. And I think a lot of it is preparing the emotional side for your family for when you go. The money's money.
There's no handbook for what happens in real estate after loss, no checklist for grief, and no pause button when a home or mortgage or a lifetime of memories suddenly become your responsibility. Today's episode is not about transactions, it's about transitions. Our guest has built a nationwide practice around guiding families through one of the most overwhelming moments of their lives, managing real estate after the loss of a loved one. She is the founder of Heirloom Consulting, a trusted voice in estate and trust real estate, and has been featured on Divorce Rich and the Kindling project. More importantly, she is known as the calm in the storm. Today, we're talking about what really happens to property after loss, how legacy goes far beyond assets, and how families can find clarity when everything feels chaotic. Welcome to the Real Estate Roundtable. I'm Lancelot, Lenard, and this is a conversation every homeowner, investor, and family needs to hear. Karen, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. So good to be here.
Hey, Karen, take us back to the moment you realized family needed more than just a realtor or an attorney. They needed a guide.
Oh, boy. So I started my career as a paralegal in estate planning, and I worked for a brilliant attorney, but she was very high level. So she would take estate administration and dump it in my lap. And I saw time and time again how trust played out and family behaviors were and everything, and specifically around real estate, how complicated things would get. And so I just noticed time and time again how things could get so chaotic with families and the fights can begin. And I had a real estate broker's license in residential and commercial for the other half of my career. So I put those two things together when I created Heirloom. But I just noticed long before the types of things that happen. And also my father died when I was 10. And my mom had a house to deal with and all the different things. And so I really learned about this long before, not realizing it would one day be my career. So.
What was missing in the traditional estate or probate process?
It was missing, for one thing, a lot of people forget to fund their trust. A lot of people will have a trust and then forget to put their assets in the trust, and in particular, a piece of real estate. Also, a lot of people will have deeds that are incorrect. So when somebody dies, it doesn't automatically transfer over. So if it's not in the trust and the deed is, say, tenants in common, you're going to probate in many cases. Yeah. So a lot of times deeds are just wrong. They'll do a quick claim deed. Hey, let's do a quick claim deed. And people do that very nonchalantly without thinking. They don't go to their lawyer and say, hey, what's the appropriate move here? And so when they die, it's not set up right.
Got you. And what emotional patterns did you start seeing again and again?
Mostly fighting. Siblings fighting over the silliest things, or there's different levels of wealth within the family, siblings. So one person might have one attitude towards the property and the other one might be like, oh, it's no big deal. We can get it in 6 months or a year. And the other one's, I need the money today. Or that's not what mom told me. That's not what dad told me. So there's a lot of miscommunicating and a lot of fighting unnecessarily. If it's set up properly and communicated, of course, everything can be avoided. But I think a lot of people worry about, if I tell my kids and they know this inheritance is coming, are they just going to sit around and wait and not live their lives and not create their careers and their own legacies? So I can really see both sides of how people handle it.
And is that what ultimately led you to create Heirloom Consulting?
Yeah, I really saw the holes in the system. So again, the trusts that are not being funded. So people die and they have all these assets that are not titled properly. And so they end up going to probate, which is very costly and not transparent at all, and causes a lot of fighting amongst the family because maybe the intent was to give it to one person, but now it's in probate. So guess what? It's being shared. Sorry, you didn't put it in your trust. There's nothing we can do now. And then people, when they're choosing their trustees and their personal representatives and their agents for power of attorney, it's always been this sort of, oh, of course I'm going to choose my wife. Okay, and then my most professional child. And in reality, how that plays out in the real world is that your wife is also 85. You handled all the finances. She doesn't know anything about anything anymore because you've never shared that with her. And this is just generalizing, of course. And she's grieving you, her best friend who just died. And now you're expecting her to do 4 hours of trustee work. And then let's say you choose your child. Well, they're sandwich generation now, running their own lives. They're also grieving you. They have kids and lives and careers and all this other stuff. They also don't have time or the inclination to fight with their siblings and handle all the paperwork and all the pressure that goes along with it. So I think a lot of times people, when they're choosing their fiduciaries, aren't really thinking, how is this going to play out in the end? And so I think that's one of the biggest things that play out wrong.
Got you. And why is real estate often the most overwhelming part of an estate or trust after a loss?
People see real estate as their home, right? This is where we grew up. This is where we went up north every year. This is where our family spent a lot of time. It's very emotional. So they are very tied to it for different reasons. But the fact is, real estate requires taxes to be paid, insurance, utility bills, and all the things. Somebody has to maintain it and keep an eye on it. If you don't take care of it and maintain it, it deteriorates. And I've seen that firsthand on some very valuable property where 10 years they let it go. And it just, everything in the house turned gray. It was the craziest thing. It just deteriorated. They had to knock it down. So people are emotional about it, and then there's the cost. So you have those two competing factors. I really want to keep it, but I don't have the money for the maintenance. There's a lot of different factors.
That's a big dilemma in every family because a lot of the times the kids don't have the funds to maintain the big house. For some reason, it's that wealth didn't continue further down. The parents didn't put the right things in place to have that carry on, the legacy basically.
And you can put that in your trust. You can set it up so money is set aside to maintain the property.
Correct. That's really important. It's like, hey, I'm going to give you a $5 million property, but no money to maintain it or pay the bills on it. Isn't that crazy? Oh, what am I going to do? I will work at UPS for the $5 million property. You know what I'm saying? I'm not saying that yes is one thing, but
it's similar with pets too, by the way. Pets don't set up their pet trust. And so they just assume somebody's going to want to take their dog, but then you have to maintain the dog too. And dogs aren't inexpensive, or their cat or their snake or whatever they have. If you just set everything up front and you really think it out and you really plan, things can play out really nicely. But it almost never does, because as much as people say that they're organized and prepared, there's stuff that gets missed and communication that doesn't happen.
Got you. What are the biggest mistakes families make early on?
They come rushing into the house and start taking things out. A lot of times people don't care about the personal property, but sometimes they do. And they have this list of personal property that they want the ring for Susie and they want the car for Jeff and whatever their plan is. But people don't follow that. They just go rushing in the house and start tearing through all the belongings and take whatever they want. And that starts the fight. That starts the whole process of lack of trust and lack of communication. And also, when you first have a house in particular, you have to make sure it's secure. If you're a trustee or personal representative, you have to make sure it's secure, clean out the fridge, take out the trash, make sure it's maintained. There's just all the little things, and make sure there's no broken glass, there's no bugs, there's no, you have to really inspect the house and make sure it's in good shape. If the roof falls in or if the heat isn't turned up and it's winter, all the different things can happen to a house if you're not taking care of it. So there's a bunch of initial things that need to hurry up and be taken care of. Mail. You don't want somebody going in and taking the mail, so you want to forward the mail. So it's a lot.
And how does grief impact decision making around selling, maintaining, or renting?
So I'm sure you've noticed that you can meet people and they're the nicest people you've ever met, but when it comes to money, they become monsters. I can't explain it. I can't tell you why, but something happens when it comes to money that people's personalities can change quite a bit. Also, they're sad, they're stressed, they're grieving, they're foggy, all the different things that happen during grief. And so all the family dynamics come up from the past, and people, they really tend to let out their worst selves a lot of times. Or they just say, I'm denouncing myself from this whole process, let it play. I don't care about any of this. But at the end of the day, there's really no asset worth losing a family member over it or a relationship over it.
But I've noticed that if you have not like super wealthy, but you have, okay, we have a decent jobs, we're making decent money, and we're well off. We could use extra, but we don't really need it. Those family members tend to bicker less, in my opinion, what I've seen, than the ones that have not that much and not that well off, or have a ton of kids, let's say, that, oh my God, what am I going to do with all these kids? Now let's grab what grandma and grandpa or mom and dad built and let's give it to the kids. And then, but the siblings have kids too. And it gets like that awkward, it ruins families, as you said. Money can ruin families that way.
I've actually seen the opposite a lot, where the wealthiest person is the greediest person.
That's why I try to say that it's not like the wealthiest, like
Yeah.
fighting over it. It's like the ones that are like your average person that has some decent jobs, but not like making a killing, but they're like humble enough to not go after this stuff. The really wealthy ones want more, and the really poor want more too. Usually, that's my experiences. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you often say legacy isn't just about assets. What do you mean by that?
So as a parent, you're a parent, what do you want for your kids when you die? Not just money. Of course, you want them to be well off and have money, but you also want them to have self-esteem and their own growth and their own, all the different things you want for them. And you want them to love each other when you're gone. So that's one of the biggest things, is you're setting up a system where your kids will get along and they'll love each other and they'll have family holidays, and you'll be looking down on them going, oh, look how happy they are. The family recipes, and they're having Thanksgiving together. And I think a lot of it is preparing the emotional side for your family for when you go. The money's money. At the end of the day, if your kids have money or don't have money, isn't going to change a lot about their relationship. So what you really have control over is making sure they all feel loved and cared about, and that you really thought about them, and maybe write them a letter and, hey, this is why I made these decisions that I made, and you know how much I love you, and or a video. I always feel like that would be such a nice thing to do. But people don't.
An explanation's always good to have.
Yeah.
When you get the read from the attorney about what's going where, it's always good if it has an explanation. It's like, look, I'm not giving you a bunch of money because I know that you can survive. And I know that you're a hustler, and I know you're going to make it no matter what. I'm helping out your little brother or your older brother because they need it more than you do. So like that, in an explanation does help a lot.
Yeah, and you know your kids' personalities.
Exactly. I'm giving you the family business because I know you can handle it. The other two will get money because I know that's what they need. You get the business, run it. Help your brothers out with it, et cetera, et cetera. I'm just going here.
I think you're doing a great job. Could be a whole new business for you.
Yeah, look, business is always something valuable in my mind. And I've spoken to several attorneys already on my podcast. And that was one of the things that they say that's like the hardest thing to divvy up because you've got four siblings and three don't care about it, but the one does. The one that runs it has to pay out the other one or buy them out of the business because now they're all inheriting it. But he's the one that's say been next to mom and dad running the business with them for 10 years. But like how much, what's the percentage? How is that divvied up properly or that's fair for everybody? It's always a hard question.
And being the one working every day running this business and you're giving 3/4 of your money out to your siblings and you're getting a quarter. Wouldn't you be mad?
Yeah, it would be like crazy. What are we doing here?
Let's just sell it. I'm not going to work this hard for you guys.
Yeah, so the last person I interviewed about this, she was mentioning that they sell businesses and brokerages and stuff like that. And it was a conversation that came up. And she said the solution is usually the siblings that are not involved in it actively get a smaller portion or a buyout option from the other sibling that is running it. So she was like, if you're running it, you are entitled to most of that business in percentage wise, 60, 70, 50, 60, 70, 75% even. And then the other ones that are not involved get a small portion and you can buy them out or they can get paid out monthly or quarterly or however you divvy up the funds or the long-term payout way. She does a lot of deals for older brokers that are retiring. And they have these dilemmas of what's happening. I only have one sibling or one of my kids in the business, and the other ones are just goofing around doing other things. So it's always a question with them.
And every family is so unique that you really have to dig in. What are their personalities? What are their expectations? What can we tell them? What can we not tell them? Just do some people need trustees because they can't handle their money on their own? There's all different things that play out.
Yeah, trustees is a great way of hiring a big law firm that's been around for over 100 years or maybe yourself to manage the funds. And you put it in guidelines of how to manage the funds. Maybe do a board of certain relatives that can have a say in are you releasing funds or not for this kiddo or a certain life event or how much are you releasing? And I think that's the good thing about a trust is if you're a successful entrepreneur and you built a great business and you built a great life, and you still want to have the hands on the reins a little bit longer after you pass, the trust is a way of doing that to make sure that they keep in line with your legacy and what you're passing down to them. Yeah.
You can make it however you want.
Yeah. Can you share a moment where a real estate decision changed the family's future for a better or worse?
Yeah, the most stark one was these two properties that I was telling you about. This woman, she was actually still alive, but she was incapacitated. And she had a trustee that was not family and not beneficiary, so he didn't have a stake in the game. And her rules were don't sell the houses. So for 10 years, they didn't sell the houses. They were worth millions, each one of them. They were prime real estate. And they also didn't maintain them. So he just let the property go. He didn't do any repairs. He didn't do anything, zero. And so these properties lost millions of dollars. They had to demo them. And she was in memory care. So she didn't have capacity to make these kinds of decisions anymore. And his concern was she would be mad at him. You're the trustee. Your job is to make the decision what's best for the beneficiaries at this point and the trust, because they're in the trust. So he wasn't abiding by the trust. He was abiding by his fear that she would yell at him or something. So that was a very expensive lesson for this family. They lost so much money from these two houses.
Yeah, sounds really sad.
It's really sad.
You know, not even the kids were thinking about maintaining those. Like, I know it's not theirs yet, but come on, let's go put the new coat of paint on it. Let's call handyman out to fix the gutters and stuff. Come on.
And they could have rented the properties and gotten tons of money for rental income. So they lost out on all rental income. They could have sold the properties. They could have maintained the properties, anything, because they were just sitting there doing nothing on this beautiful land. One was on the lake. One was on 3 acres. They could have done anything. And of course, all the neighbors are like, get rid of these houses. They're dangerous at this point. And he just wouldn't do anything until she died. And it was, as trustee, that's not your job.
No,
Your job is to do what's best for the integrity of the trust.
it's really important to find the right trustee for your estate. That is really important. The one that has the savvy to continue your legacy, basically, in a way. I think
And
that's
he
vital.
understands the process, what his job is, because there's a lot of duties you have, and it can be confusing, right? You want to listen to her, sure, but you also need to maintain the property and maintain the value of the property.
Exactly.
So it can be confusing. So choosing this neighbor or this guy, like some random guy, what is she thinking? I think she must not have had kids. So I'm not sure who ended up getting, because she chose this guy instead.
Interesting. How do you help families balance emotional attachment with practical responsibility?
Okay, say that again. Sorry.
How do you help families balance emotional attachment with practical responsibility?
So we are very tactical in our approach. So we meet with the family and we are in their face holding their hands. So we really get down to like, why do you want this art piece? Why are you arguing over this art piece? What do you want to do with this stuff? Do you want to keep this house because emotionally you feel attached to it? Just really just get into the weeds with them to help them see that maybe they're not making the most logical decision for them in the end. And we show them, we break down the numbers and what is this going to cost and what are you going to lose by maybe keeping the house or selling the house. And we really just try to be very practical with them, but also very warm and loving. I don't know how else to say it. But people are very sad and struggling and they're not clear when somebody dies. And you have that brain fog for 6 months, 12 months. So you have to be very patient. It can take 6 months sometimes because they're not ready or they need a break or a million different things play out. Fighting.
There's a lot of things happening. So when someone suddenly becomes responsible for an estate, where should they start, practically speaking?
So we have actually a whole play out of how things should go. And it really is interesting how it works out, almost the same every time. We really just make a list of all the assets. Hopefully they already have that. A lot of times they don't. So we go digging for assets. We make sure anything that needs to be maintained is got maintenance on it, keeping it insured and keeping it in good condition. And then we make the decision about all the personal property, what we're going to do with all the personal property and the donations and the clean out. So all that has to take place really prior to selling the house. And then a house can be listed or not listed. And then all of the assets in the meantime, just applying for the benefits of anything that has a beneficiary designation on it. It really is not complicated. It's just a lot of detail, right? Social Security has to know what's going on and they'll keep sending you checks. And by the way, if you cash them, they're going to ask for it back. Taxes have to be paid. The trust has to have taxes done. So there's a lot of detail that people don't know about. You might have VA benefits you didn't know about. You might have Social Security benefits you didn't know about. You might have assets or heirs you didn't know about. A lot of times we'll find heirs for people. So it's just a lot of detail. No one thing is complicated. It's just a lot of red tape.
Got you. And what role should a real estate professional play during estate or trust transitions?
That is a good question. I think it's imperative if you're a realtor and you're going to take on an estate piece of real estate, I think it's imperative that you understand the process, that it could take longer, there are emotions involved, that who you can speak to, who you cannot speak to, who you're representing. It's just a little bit more due diligence than a regular real estate case because you have more people involved. You have to understand that if there's a trust, you need to prove who can sign the trust. And typically that's a certificate of trust that everybody needs to see to make sure who's signing now. Obviously the person's deceased, so who's now in charge. So I think it's important to really understand the process. It's a little bit different. It's not terribly different, but it is, you can drop the ball pretty easily if you miss certain steps.
How is advocacy different from sales in these moments?
Very important. So in these cases, there's so much advocacy that needs to be done. You're protecting the trust, the trustee, the deceased person's wishes, the beneficiaries. There's so much more. You have to really understand all the parts and pieces to make sure you're advocating for the end result that's the best for everybody. And I think as a realtor, you have to really be cognizant of that. And you're really much more of an advocate than you are a salesperson in these cases. There's just so much more. It's not just a, hey, Sue, you want to buy a house? Let's go look. Okay, let's close. It's so much more. So many more people, so many more emotions, details.
So is that where agents unintentionally cause harm? Is that they act as a salesperson instead of a person that's caring?
Yeah, I think you can't be a transactional person. So some real estate people are transactional, one and done, we're done. If you're that type of realtor, good for you, but it doesn't work with an estate. There's too much that needs to play out. There's too many things going on, too many balls in the air for you to not care. So for instance, we had a house that just closed yesterday, and we did an estate clean out and an estate sale. And the person who did the estate sale just dropped the ball over and over again. And it caused a lot of strife for the family. We were overseeing it all, but they kept saying, hey, we didn't get that thing that they promised, and they still have garbage in the garage, and they still haven't cleaned out. There was all this furniture that they left in a bathtub in the upstairs bathroom. It doesn't sound like a big deal, but when you're grieving and you're stressed and you're just trying to get this thing behind you, all these little things can add up, right? So you just can't be a transactional person in this business.
Correct.
And I think in all real estate, really, you shouldn't be. I mean,
No,
it should become your friends.
exactly. It's like your I'm not saying closest friend, but your friend that you can rely on and you can call for any help needed with your home. Like we are the people, we're the connectors, we're the mayors of the town, so called. That you call if you have a leaky plumbing issue or an electrical issue. It's like, hey, by the way, do you know an electrician? Do you know a plumber? Do you know a handyman? Do you know where I can pick up a trash bin? Do I need to call to switch on my electricity? Stuff like that. That's what the value in real estate is not just the transaction itself, or a realtor. It doesn't come from just the transaction. It comes from their knowledge of the area and the people that they know in the area. And I think that brings immense value to a transaction, to a person in a transaction.
You also have to be a communicator, right?
Yes.
Sometimes you have to give bad news. You just have to immediately get on the phone and share that news and work it out. So a lot of times people will be like, oh, I'm not gonna say anything. We just closed on a property yesterday, and we got an addendum from December 9th that nobody ever saw before about earnest money. Why did nobody ever communicate that to us? Thank God we closed and it worked out. But you just need to always be communicating. And I think a lot of people get scared. Oh, I have bad news. We need $1,000 out of pocket for electric or whatever. And so I think you must be a communicator in order to be really good at this.
Yeah. A family listening today wants to create peace of mind now instead of crisis later. What's the first conversation they should have?
So we have this thing we call legacy planning, and where it's 16 pages of all the information the trustee and personal representative will need to know, right? Who are your attorneys? What is their contact information? Who is your health insurance, your auto insurance, and all your brokerage accounts, and who's your financial advisor, and what are your account numbers, and who are your beneficiaries? Just everything they'll need to know, because what happens is you die and it's nobody knows where your stuff is. And people with wealth tend to be collectors of money. They just do it for fun. And so they forget, oh yeah, I have that life insurance. Remember, I had that MetLife. They forget. And so money gets flushed down the toilet if you don't have it organized and people don't know what you have. Now, it's important to share with your family what your intentions are. Some people, again, are nervous about doing that because they don't want their kids to get lazy and not live their own lives waiting around for your money. But there's a certain amount of information you have to give them so that they are prepared, so they're not mad at you after you die. And then if you have this all organized and prepared and you pick the right trustee and fiduciaries, then it can all just play out nicely and you can rest in peace. You just put it all in writing. So nobody's confused, nobody's surprised. Get great attorneys to do your estate planning for you. Make sure you're funding your trust. And just be really clear on your wishes. A lot of times I'll work with a family while a person's alive on their trust when they choose me to be their trustee, so that I'm in on the conversations and I know what they want when they die. That is the best case scenario.
Karen, thank you very much. Today's conversation is a reminder that real estate is never just property. It's memory, responsibility, and legacy. If this episode resonated with you, or if you know someone navigating estate or trust real estate, share this conversation with them. It could save years of stress and heartache. Our guest today was Karen Schultz-Tarnopol, founder of Heirloom Consulting, where families find clarity, compassion, and guidance when they need it the most. You can find Karen and her resources in the show notes. I'm Lancelot, Lenard, and this has been the Real Estate Roundtable, where real conversations lead to better decisions. Until next time, see you guys.
Thank you for joining us on Sir Lancelot's Real Estate Roundtable, where we've unveiled the mysteries of real estate together. Remember, in this kingdom of possibilities, every dream home is just a discussion away. I can help your real estate dreams come true. Just call me at 786-449-7518. Until our next roundtable, may your ventures be prosperous and your homes be filled with love and joy. Farewell, fellow knights of real estate.